Fyodor Dostoevsky is widely regarded as one of the greatest novelists in history. His fictional work is so rich with deep insights into human psychology, particularly its interplay with various social and political structures of the modern world. He is equal parts renowned psychologist and philosopher. His work brings into question how well we truly know ourselves, what we really want, and how we go about considering and attaining these things in the world, as well as the consequences of following false delusions and impossible ideals. His insights and warnings about humanity, both individually and collectively, were not only ahead of his time, but in many ways, they are still arguably unheeded warnings, immensely relevant to today. Dostoevsky was born in 1821 in Moscow, Russia, to a well-off Orthodox Christian family. His father was a successful doctor, and his family lived on the hospital grounds where his father worked. While in his teens, however, his mother died of tuberculosis, and while Dostoevsky was away at school studying to become an engineer, his father died without definitive cause, although it was reported and speculated that he was murdered by his own serfs in an act of vengeance against his abusive tendencies. Young Dostoevsky's proximity to the conditions of a hospital, his upbringing in a strong faith family, and the early deaths of both his parents, especially that of the mysterious possible murder of his father, likely all culminated into some amount of the early foundation of what would go on to become his unique but tragic voice as a writer. After graduating from a military engineering institute, Dostoevsky would work as an engineer. However, as a means of engaging in his budding passion for literature and humanities, he also began translating books on the side during this time. As this passion for literature soon increased further and further, he would resign from his engineering career and focus solely on writing himself. In 1846, he published his first book, titled Poor Folk. Right away, this work received commercial success and was reviewed favorably by literary critics of the time, deemed as Russia's first social novel. However, Dostoevsky's subsequent works just following this one would struggle to find any similar level of success, and he soon found himself mostly just experimenting and failing as a writer, quickly falling into financial distress. Partly as a consequence of his financial situation, in 1847, while in his late 20s, Dostoevsky became associated with a radical group of writers and intellectuals focused on utopian socialism. This, however, would soon lead him to being arrested when the government went after those associated with these types of groups. In 1849, as punishment, Dostoevsky was sentenced to death by firing squad. On December 22nd of the same year, he stood facing the barrel of a gun pointed at his head. The remainder of his life was now counted in minutes. As the officials held their aim and steadied to pull the trigger, suddenly, at the last moment, a message arrived and Dostoevsky was pardoned. The execution would turn out to be a mock execution, used merely as a psychological tactic to instill fear in the prisoners. Following this, Dostoevsky was instead sent to Siberia, where he was forced to work grueling labor in horrible conditions for 4 years. In 1860, Dostoevsky returned from Siberia, but returned a very different man. He would soon begin writing again, but now his voice would contain a new tone of pessimism, realism, and a highly perceptive understanding of the human psyche. He was now turned away from utopian ideals of society, and instead, his focus was now turned inward towards spiritual and psychological explorations. Over the following 20 years, before dying of a lung disorder in 1881, Dostoevsky would produce several successful masterpieces, many of which are still regarded as some of the most important works of literature to this day, including Notes from Underground, Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, Demons, and The Brothers Karamazov. One of the more prominent themes established in much of Dostoevsky's work was his insights on and assessment of human suffering. More particularly, the means by which and the consequences of humanity trying to overcome and rid itself of suffering, especially in relation to a time in which religious and spiritual anchors were cut loose and individuals and societies were left to create and defend their worldviews through an increasing thrust of rationality and technology toward the ideal of perfect well-being. In Notes from Underground, published in 1864, Dostoevsky explores and critiques these modern Western ideals, rationality and technological progress as a means toward perfect happiness and goodness. In the novel, we follow an unnamed retired civil servant, often referred to as the Underground Man, through a series of diary entries. The man is deeply angered and unhappy, and he possesses a disdain for others and the delusions in which others live. He wants to make other people see the truth and acknowledge the same discontent and absurdity he knows and feels in life. For Dostoevsky, suffering is a fundamental tenet of human life. It is infused in the blood. Thus, there is no life, nor social or material condition for life that can exist without suffering. And so, for Dostoevsky, all efforts and accomplishments of progress, both individually and collectively, can merely change the particular things that we derive our suffering from, but cannot eliminate our suffering comprehensively. Man only likes to count his troubles. He doesn't calculate his happiness, wrote Dostoevsky. For Dostoevsky, since there can never be a social or material structure that rids humanity of unhappiness or suffering, any objective of improving the world toward an idealistic, utopian version of itself is doomed to fail. Through The Underground Man, Dostoevsky largely critiques and warns about humanity pursuing these sorts of ideals while operating within the increasingly prevalent worldviews of nihilism, utopianism, rationalism, and egoism, which essentially culminate into the beliefs that there is no inherent or transcendent meaning to life, and that actions and morality should be based on reason and knowledge, with self-interest as the driving force. Dostoevsky argued, however, that with the void of religious faith,